Buckle up, everybody, because today we're diving deep into a court case that'll leave you thinking, wait, what?
Oh, it's a good one. Gets right to the heart of some major constitutional questions.
It all starts with a simple bus ride in Chicago. Ends up in the courts, tangled up in the Fourth Amendment, the Second Amendment, concealed carry laws, the whole shebang.
Yeah, it really makes you think about those everyday situations, the ones that can suddenly turn into like a legal battle over your rights.
Okay, so picture this. You're on the bus, just mind your own business, and boom, police stop the bus, come on board, and arrest a passenger for, get this, having a gun. Sounds crazy, right? Like something out of a movie.
It does, but this actually happened.
It did. It's the case of United States v. Dameron. And as we unravel this case, you'll see there are more twists and turns than you might expect.
Definitely more than a bus route.
So let's rewind to July 5th, 2018. Our main character, Emmanuel Dameron, is walking in a neighborhood that, according to police records, is known for its high crime rate. And now, here's where things get interesting. A Chicago police officer is watching live feeds from those poll cameras.
Oh yeah, the ones you see everywhere these days.
Exactly. And the officer spots Dameron, sees what looks like a gun tucked into his waistband.
So right away, we're thinking about surveillance, privacy in public, all that.
A whole other deep dive right there.
I bet.
But for now, let's stick with Dameron. The officer calls in a tactical team. Dameron then hops on a city bus, and things escalate quickly.
I bet.
The tactical team stops the bus, boards it, goes straight to Dameron, frisks him. And yep, just as that officer thought, they find a gun in his waistband. Dameron's arrested, charged with possessing a firearm as a felon.
Okay, but now I gotta ask, did they even have the right to do that? I mean, seeing a bulge under a shirt, is that enough to stop and frisk someone? Seems like a pretty big leap.
You're hitting on a crucial point right there. That's where the Fourth Amendment comes into play, the one that protects against unreasonable searches and seizures.
The Fourth Amendment, everyone's heard of it, but what does it actually mean in practice?
Right. So break it down for us. What's the deal with the Fourth Amendment?
Well, the gist is police can't just search you or your stuff without a good reason. They need what's called probable cause, which is like a really high standard. But there's this exception, a big one, called reasonable suspicion, and it comes from a famous case, Terry v. Ohio. That case established that police can do a quick investigatory stop, a stop and frisk, if they have reasonable suspicion that someone's up to no good and that they're armed and dangerous.
So it's not enough to just see a potential weapon. There needs to be more to justify stopping someone. But reasonable suspicion, that feels kind of subjective, doesn't it?
Totally. Courts have been trying to define that for ages. Basically, it means the cops need to be able to point to specific facts, circumstances that would make any reasonable person think, okay, something's off here and this person might be armed. It can't just be a hunch. They need solid evidence.
Gotcha. So in Dameron's case, seeing that bulge under his shirt in a high-crime area, was that enough to justify stopping the whole bus and frisking him?
Well, that's exactly what Dameron's lawyers argued. They filed what's called a motion to suppress. Basically, they're asking the court to throw out the gun as evidence because they're saying the cops didn't have enough evidence to stop and frisk him in the first place.
So, like, you got that evidence unfairly, can't use it.
You got it. It's a key part of protecting those Fourth Amendment rights, making sure evidence is obtained legally.
Makes sense. So the defense says not enough evidence, but what was the prosecution's argument?
They argued that put it all together, the visible bulge, the high crime area, that created enough reasonable suspicion for the officers to act.
So did the court agree? Did they think those circumstances met the bar for reasonable suspicion?
They did. The district court denied Dameron's motion to suppress. They said context matters. It's not just about the potential weapon, it's the whole picture. And in this case, they ruled that combo, the bulge, and the location, that was enough for reasonable suspicion.
Interesting. So seems pretty open and shut, right? But here's where things take a turn. And you're probably thinking about it already. Concealed carry laws. Illinois has them. Couldn't Dameron have been a legal gun owner? Doesn't that change everything?
You're thinking like a lawyer now. And you're right. Illinois does have concealed carry. So could the police just assume Dameron was breaking the law by having that gun?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And yeah, Dameron's lawyers, they brought up the Second Amendment during the appeals process. But there's a twist, a little legal snag that really throws a wrench in those arguments.
A twist, huh? Lay it on me. So remember, this whole thing went down on a city bus. And that little detail, that's actually huge. Because the Illinois Concealed Carry Act, the very law that says people can carry concealed guns, well, it has a specific exception. It's all about public transportation.
So, like, there are places you can carry, places you can't.
You got it. The law, it straight up says no firearms on any public transportation, buses, trains, subways, anything funded by public dollars. So even if Dameron had a permit, all legit and everything, the minute he stepped on that bus, he was breaking the law.
Wow. So even if he'd done everything right to legally carry, he still couldn't have it on the bus. Feels like a bit of a catch-22.
It does, right? It shows you how complicated these concealed carry laws can get. The right to bear arms, bumping up against all these other regulations. And this is where the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, they're the ones who looked at Dameron's appeal. This is where they really zeroed in. They kind of skipped over that big Second Amendment debate and focused on this specific violation of Illinois law.
So they said, because he had a gun on the bus, permit or no permit, he was breaking the law. And that gave the police that reasonable suspicion to stop and frisk him.
Exactly. That's what makes this case so fascinating. It's less about the Second Amendment in general, more about how the Fourth Amendment works alongside these very specific state laws. The court's saying, basically, even if he could legally carry that gun somewhere else, being on the bus with it created reasonable suspicion of criminal activity.
It's like a legal puzzle, figuring out where you can and can't carry based on these super specific laws. Interesting, but kind of confusing too. So what happened to Dameron in the end?
They upheld his conviction. The Seventh Circuit agreed with the lower court, said the police were within their Fourth Amendment rights. They stressed that because he was carrying on that bus, directly violating Illinois law, that was enough for reasonable suspicion.
So it's not just can you carry a gun, but where you can carry it. And a little detail like being on a bus can have big consequences. But I still keep thinking about the big picture. The Second Amendment, it guarantees the right to bear arms, right? Where does that fit into all of this?
You're right to bring that up. The Second Amendment, it's fundamental to American law. And yeah, it's totally relevant here. The thing is, the Seventh Circuit, they focused narrowly on that concealed carry violation and what it meant for the Fourth Amendment. But by doing that, they kind of sidestepped a direct clash between those two big amendments.
Feels like we're tiptoeing around a huge constitutional issue.
We are. And this case, even though it was decided on these very specific grounds, it touches on some much bigger, much more debated issues about the Second Amendment. Especially now, with those recent Supreme Court decisions, Heller and Bruen, those really expanded gun rights.
For those of us who aren't legal experts, what are those cases all about? Why do they matter here?
Okay, so Heller, that was a big one back in 2008. The Supreme Court, they said for the first time that the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to have a gun at home for self-defense. That was a major shift in how we understand the Second Amendment. It opened the door for more legal challenges.
So Heller said individuals can own guns, not just militias, right?
Exactly. Then in 2022, the Supreme Court went even further with the Bruen case. They struck down a New York law that restricted concealed carry permits. Basically, they said the right to bear arms goes beyond your home. And it set a higher bar for states to justify any limits on those permits.
So Heller, Bruen, they've really broadened the Second Amendment. How do they connect back to Dameron?
That's the question, isn't it? They make us wonder if laws like that Illinois provision, the one banning guns on public transport, can they hold up under this new understanding of the Second Amendment? The Seventh Circuit, they didn't answer that directly, but it's there, lurking in the background of the case. It's this tension that's building, and it could reshape the whole legal landscape around gun rights and law enforcement.
Sounds like we're on the verge of a major legal showdown.
Maybe we are.
So Dameron's case, it might have been decided on those narrow grounds, concealed carry and the Fourth Amendment, but there are clearly much bigger issues at play here. Issues we'll be debating and fighting over in court for years to come, and that's what we're going to dig into when we come back for the final part of our deep dive. We'll explore what United States v. Dameron means for the big picture, what it means for the future of gun laws, law enforcement, and that tricky balance between public safety and individual rights. All right, we're back, wrapping up our deep dive into this Dameron case. It's been a wild ride, from that bus stop in Chicago all the way to the courts, grappling with the Fourth Amendment, concealed carry, and the whole Second Amendment debate lurking in the background.
It really shows you how complicated things can get, huh? Individual rights, law enforcement, the Constitution, it's all intertwined.
Totally. And even though the court kind of sidestepped a head-on collision between those big amendments, the Fourth and the Second, it feels like we've only just started to uncover this huge debate that's going on. Dameron's case, it might be about one guy on a bus, but it raises some really big questions about where we draw the line,
Mm-hmm.
public safety versus personal freedom.
Oh, yeah. It's a classic dilemma. And for everyone listening, I think the takeaway here is this case isn't just about legal mumbo jumbo, it's about your rights, how they're balanced against worries about security and crime. The Dameron case, it makes us ask those tough questions, like how much power should we give law enforcement to stop and search people? What exactly is reasonable suspicion? And how do we make sure there's no bias, no profiling going on?
And on the other side of the coin, how do we protect those individual rights, especially the Second Amendment, while still trying to keep our communities safe?
It's like walking a tightrope. It is, and this whole balancing act is only going to get trickier as the laws around the Second Amendment keep changing. Those Supreme Court decisions, Heller, Bruin, they've really broadened gun rights, and that's going to impact cases like Dameron from now on.
Feels like we're at a turning point. We've got these expanding gun rights, and at the same time, more and more concerns about gun violence. How do we make sense of it all? How do we create laws that respect individual rights and keep people safe?
Tough questions. There's no easy answers. But what Dameron shows us is that these aren't just abstract debates happening in courtrooms. They have real consequences for real people. The outcome of this case, it could change how police interact with anyone carrying a gun, legally or not. It could spark more challenges to gun control measures, and it could reshape how courts interpret the Second Amendment across the board.
So whether you're out walking, riding the bus, or just catching up on the news, remember United States v. Dameron. It reminds us that the law is constantly evolving. Our understanding of rights, especially gun rights, it's still shifting.
Absolutely. Stay informed, keep those conversations going, think critically about what's happening around you. The balance between liberty and security, it's an ongoing conversation, and we all have a role to play.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everybody. We'll see you next time with another fascinating topic, ready to explore the world around us, one case, one issue at a time.